There is a moment in history that almost no one talks about. Not a battle, not an assassination, not the fall of an empire. It was quieter than all of that. It was a single plant, growing on a narrow strip of coastal land in North Africa. And the day the last person who knew how to cultivate it died, something irreplaceable left this world forever. Not a copy exists, not a seed, not a cutting, nothing. Just descriptions written by men who could not believe what they were watching disappear. This is not a story about extinction in the way we usually tell it. This is a story about knowledge, about the kind of knowledge that does not get written down because writing it down would make it stealable. The kind that lives in one family's hands, in one community's practice, passed from father to son across generations. Until one generation does not make it through and the knowledge dies with them, quietly, without anyone realizing what has just been lost. We do not know his name. We never will. But we know men like him existed because the system he maintained was too precise, too profitable, and too durable to have been accidental. He was a trader. He worked somewhere in the network that controlled Silphium, the most valuable plant the ancient world ever produced. And the decisions men like him made across decades of commerce and war and political upheaval led directly to a single moment. A Roman emperor ate the last known stalk of a plant that had once been worth its weight in silver. Ate it, not as medicine, not as a military asset, as a curiosity, because it was the last one. And that was the kind of thing emperors did. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at the ancient world completely differently. The plant was called Silphium. If you have never heard that name, that is exactly the point. The people who controlled it had every reason to keep the rest of the world in the dark. Knowledge in the ancient Mediterranean was not shared freely. It was hoarded, it was weaponized. And Silphium was the most valuable piece of biological knowledge the ancient world ever produced. The city of Cyrene, located in what is now northeastern Libya, minted its silver coins with the image of the Silphium plant stamped on one face. Not a king, not a god, a plant. That tells you everything about what Silphium meant to that economy. It was not just their product, it was their identity, their leverage, and their guarantee of survival. As long as Silphium existed and Cyrene controlled it, no empire could afford to simply erase the city. You do not burn down the only pharmacy in the world. And Silphium was functionally exactly that. Not a spice, not a flavoring, a pharmaceutical, a preservative, a contraceptive, and a military ration enhancer, all in one plant. Hippocrates described its medical applications across a remarkable range of conditions. Theophrastus, the father of botany, devoted careful attention to its unique growing requirements. He noted that no successful cultivation outside its native region had ever been achieved. Roman soldiers carried Silphium resin in their field kits the way modern soldiers carry painkillers. It was used to treat fever, indigestion, internal bleeding, and infected wounds. It was used by women across the ancient Mediterranean to regulate fertility, with a reliability considered genuinely effective. Some modern pharmacologists who have studied the related Ferula genus believe this is entirely plausible, given the compounds present in closely related species. And then there was what it did to food. Silphium resin added to meat extended its shelf life without refrigeration. For an army marching through summer heat with no reliable supply chain, that was not a convenience. That was the difference between a functional fighting force and a column of sick men dragging themselves across a desert. Every general in the Mediterranean knew this. Every general wanted it. And the men who controlled the Silphium trade knew exactly what that desperation was worth. The trade itself was managed through the city of Cyrene, which held what amounted to a geographical monopoly. The plant grew only in a specific coastal valley with a particular microclimate, the right soil, the right rainfall, the right temperature. Attempts to cultivate it elsewhere had been made for over a century. Every single one had failed. The plant would grow for a season or two in foreign soil and then quietly die, producing nothing of value, as if it understood it did not belong there. Theophrastus documented these failed attempts himself. He noted with evident frustration that Silphium resisted every effort at domestication. It was, in his assessment, fundamentally wild. It could be harvested. It could not be farmed. Imagine a single valley producing the only source of a medicine that treated a dozen serious conditions. A medicine that worked as a contraceptive, that preserved food in a world without refrigeration. Medicine that could not be synthesized, could not be grown anywhere else. And the people living near that valley had 3 generations of accumulated knowledge about how to harvest it without destroying the wild population. That is what Cyrene had. And that is what made the knowledge of the traders who managed the harvest so extraordinarily valuable and so extraordinarily dangerous to lose. Because here is what tends not to get written down in a functioning monopoly: the operational details, the specific harvesting windows, the parts of the plant that could be taken without killing the root system, the ratio of harvest to regrowth that kept the wild population stable, the processing method that preserved the resin's potency during transport. None of this needed to be recorded while the system was working. Recording it would have been a liability. Knowledge committed to text can be stolen, copied, sold to a competitor. Knowledge that lives only in the hands and the memory of a specific community is knowledge that cannot be taken. So it stayed oral, it stayed internal. It was the family silver, except instead of silver, it was the actual mechanism keeping the family alive. If this kind of history grips you, the hidden levers, the private knowledge, the moments where one community's secret shaped the ancient world, subscribe now. We go to places most history channels never look. The Punic Wars changed everything. Between 264 and 146 before the Common Era, Carthage and Rome fought 3 catastrophic conflicts that restructured the entire Mediterranean. Cyrene, caught between these colliding empires, was pulled first into the Ptolemaic Egyptian orbit and then, by 96 BCE, bequeathed directly to Rome. Through all of this, the demand for Silphium did not decrease, it increased. Long campaigns, large armies, unreliable supply lines, constant threat of disease, everything about industrialized ancient warfare made Silphium more necessary, not less. And the pressure that placed on the wild population of a plant that could not be farmed in a region experiencing political disruption was immense. The Greek geographer Strabo, writing in the late 1st century BCE, already noted that the Silphium of Cyrene was becoming harder to obtain. He attributed this partly to overharvesting by nomadic populations in the region. People who had less investment in the long-term survival of the plant than the urban traders who had historically managed it. This detail matters. It suggests that the political disruptions of the late Ptolemaic period had already begun to break down whatever management system had kept the Silphium population stable for centuries. The knowledge of how to harvest without destroying was no longer being applied. Maybe the people who carried that knowledge had fled. Maybe they had died. Maybe the economic pressures were simply too great, and the short-term demand too urgent for anyone to enforce restraint. We cannot know for certain. What we know is the result. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century of the Common Era, recorded that Silphium had become extraordinarily rare within living memory. He noted that a single stalk had been found and sent to the Emperor Nero as a remarkable curiosity. Nero ate it, not because it retained significant value as medicine or as trade, but because it was there and he was the emperor. Consuming rare things was a demonstration of power. Pliny's account is our last credible reference to a living Silphium plant. After that, silence. The descriptions continue, cited by later authors quoting earlier ones, but no new sightings, no new harvests, no new shipments. Just the growing echo of a name attached to something no longer present. And here is what makes this different from a simple ecological story. The plant's disappearance would have been a loss regardless, but the disappearance of the plant, while the knowledge of its properties was still alive, would have been a recoverable loss. If the people who understood Silphium had survived and been able to document what they knew, modern pharmacology might have had something to work with. A chemical fingerprint, a description of effects precise enough to guide synthesis, a guide to which related species came closest. Instead, what survived was enthusiasm without specificity. The ancient sources agree that Silphium was extraordinary. They disagree, or simply fail to specify, on the details that would actually matter to a modern researcher. Which compound produced the contraceptive effect? What was the correct dosage? What part of the plant, processed in what way, was used for which condition? These answers lived in the practice of the people who handled it, and that practice died without being recorded, because recording it had always seemed unnecessary while the knowledge was alive. This is a pattern that repeats across human history, and Silphium is one of its most dramatic examples. The oral transmission of critical knowledge is extraordinarily efficient right up until the moment it fails. And when it fails completely. There is no partial record, there is no degraded copy, there is nothing. Modern botanists have worked seriously on the Silphium question. The most widely accepted hypothesis is that it belonged to the Ferula genus, the giant fennels, likely a species uniquely adapted to the specific conditions of the Cyrenaican coast. Several candidate species have been proposed over the decades, none has been confirmed. The pharmacological profile described in ancient sources has not been reproduced in any known living relative. The most recent serious research came from Turkish botanist Mahmut Miski. In 2021, he published a paper proposing that Ferula drudiana, a rare plant found in the Cappadocian mountains of central Turkey, might be a surviving relative of Silphium. Miski noted morphological similarities to ancient depictions of Silphium on Cyrenean coins. He identified compounds in Ferula drudiana consistent with some of the medicinal properties attributed to Silphium in ancient sources. The scientific community received the research with cautious interest. Further study is ongoing. The fact that serious researchers are still publishing papers, still running chemical analyses, still trying to identify a plant that disappeared 2,000 years ago, that tells you everything about the scale of what was lost. Because this was not a decorative plant, this was not a regional flavor. This was a medicine that worked, a contraceptive that worked, a food preservative that worked, and the only reason we do not have it is a combination of unsustainable extraction and the catastrophic loss of the human knowledge that might have allowed recovery. The Roman economy after Silphium's disappearance had to reorganize around substitutes. Asafoetida, a resin from a different Ferula species native to Central Asia, became the closest available replacement. It is still used today, particularly in South Asian cooking. Roman writers described it with barely concealed frustration. It was not Silphium. It was the thing you used when Silphium was gone, a permanent reminder of an absence. Think about what that represents. The most medically sophisticated civilization of its era, with trade networks stretching from Britain to India, could not replace a single plant that had grown in one coastal valley in Libya. They tried for generations. They failed, and then the generation that remembered what they were trying to replace was gone. The generation after that had inherited only the failure, not the original. At some point, and this is the part that should stay with you, at some point no living person could describe from personal experience what Silphium actually tasted like, what it felt like to hold a stalk of it, what the resin smelled like when it was fresh. The loss stopped being felt and became theoretical. A word on a coin, a name in a text, an absence so complete that later generations did not even know the right questions to ask. We will never know exactly what Silphium could do. We have the descriptions, we have the pricing data that tells us how desperately the ancient world valued it. We have the coin with the plant on it, minted in silver by a city that understood its worth. We have Pliny's quiet account of a single stalk sent to an emperor who ate it without ceremony. But we do not have the molecule. We do not have the compound. We do not have whatever it was in that specific plant, grown in that specific soil, processed by hands that understood it. That gap between what was known and what survived is the real story here. Not the extinction itself, but the mechanism of the loss. The knowledge was oral because oral was safer. The harvesting was maximized because the demand was real and the pressure was constant. The political disruptions came faster than any informal management system could absorb. And the result was not a dramatic ending. It was a quiet one. A population contracting season by season, a community of knowledge thinning out, a stalk sent to Rome as a novelty, and then nothing. The next time you read about a traditional knowledge system disappearing because the last elder who carried it has died without passing it on, remember this. The ancient world was not primitive. It was not naive. It had men of extraordinary intelligence managing extraordinary resources across centuries. And it still lost this. Not through ignorance, through a combination of political pressure, economic incentive, and the simple human tendency to assume that what has always been available will continue to be available. Silphium will not come back. The knowledge of how to sustain it is gone. The chemistry that made it irreplaceable has not been reproduced. What remains is a name, a coin, a handful of ancient texts, and a botanist's careful paper sitting in a scientific journal, trying to reconstruct something from the faintest possible echo. If you want to know which other ancient resources disappeared the same way, taken for granted until the last moment, lost without record, mourned only in retrospect, leave a comment below. There are more stories like this one, more gaps, more absences hiding inside what we thought we already understood about the ancient world. And we are going to find them.